Who was the greatest NASCAR driver of all time? David Pearson. If you had any doubts, all you had to do was ask him. This episode brought to you by Petty vs. Pearson, the rivalry that shaped NASCAR, the latest release from Motor Books, and available now from your local Barnes & Noble and via barnesandnoble.com. David, there's been a lot of talk about you not getting into the NASCAR Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Is there any way to put into words what your reaction was when you heard the voting results?
Well, I heard 2 or 3 weeks, before the voting went in, that who was going to go in, and stuff like that. And there was a guy that, he knew. He said 4 of them. He said the 2 Francis going in, and he said Richard and Earnhardt's going in because they won 7 championships, So I understand that. And he said, from what I understand, they want a car owner to go in. And he said, that'd probably be Hendricks. And I told him, I said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
He said, why not? As good as they done and everything. I said, well, if you want to go back like they really ought to, I said, it'd be Junior Johnson. He said, what makes you think so? I said, if you just think about it, and I don't know whether you know it or not, but Junior Johnson, the one that got R.J. Reynolds to go into NASCAR, and got started. And I said, and look how many millions of dollars they made off of R.J. Reynolds, because R.J. Reynolds paid everything. And I said, it'd be Junior if they get a car owner, and he said, I hadn't even really thought about that, but he was right. And the guy, he told me exactly what was going to happen.
Will it be enough for you to go in next year?
Well, I mean, it's just like racing, You always want to be number one, know, and I would like to win in the first time. No, I am not lying about it. But since I'm not, I don't care where I'm going or not now, if you want to know the truth. But really, the way I felt like I shouldn't have been in to start with, and nobody else shouldn't have went in except France Sr. And then I felt like they ought to got the older people, like Raymond Parks. He's still alive. He's 95 years old. And what I understand, he's the one that let France have the money and also furnish a bunch of cars to start with, So he ought to have been in there, like Herb Thomas. I think he won the first championship or right at it or something. So he should have been in there. I felt like the first drivers and the owners and stuff like that should have been the first one to go in to start with. Then, like in the 50s and maybe the 60s the next year and then the 70s, and going up like that. But it would have been nice to be the first one in. But, you get to looking at it, wasn't nobody but Junior Johnson and Petty is the only one that's still alive that went in that time. So I just felt like the older guys ought to win in first.
David, you're one of the 2 or 3 best drivers who ever strapped into a race car in NASCAR. Where would you rank yourself?
Number 1. If you don't feel like you're the best out there, you're going to get beat. No doubt about it. Every time I got in a race car, even the first race I won, which was the World 600, well, it wasn't the first one I won, it was the first big one like that I ever won. And I was sitting there in Ray Fox's car, getting ready to start that race. I said, this car and these people, I said, they don't know who's driving this car, and I feel like if they can do it, I can do it. Okay. And I ended up winning the race, and led over half of it. But I don't know, we never will forget. Rusty Waters one time said Earnhardt was the best guy out there driving. He's the best driver there are out there. And I said right then, I said, Rusty, if you don't feel like you're the best one out there, he's going to beat you every time you get out there. And so Earnhardt like to kill him 3 or 4 times, wreck him and everything else. But yet he always still said that about him. Well, I ain't never felt that way. I felt like if anybody else can do it, I could do it.
How did racing come to be the thing that you were going to do with your life?
I've always wanted to do it. Ever since I saw my first race, I said, when I get big enough and old enough, that's what I'm going to do for a living, And I used to go to fairground and watch Cotton Owens and the guys around here, go over and run the race. And so I'd climb the tree and watch them.
Now, you mentioned the 61 World 600 at Charlotte, your first big win. You evidently blew a tire with a couple of laps to go.
Right.
And you were already 2 or 3 laps ahead of the field, and you finished that race on the rim.
Right. I was actually 7 laps ahead, is what I understand,
You were 7 laps?
At one
Really?
time. See, back then, we couldn't have a ratchet rear end or nothing like that,
Uh-huh.
so we pulled off of one wheel, and which was the right rear, and that's right rear is what I blowed. And so every time I'd mash the gas, the rim would just spin on the tire, and so I probably wasn't running 20 mile an hour if you don't know the truth, And, of course, Fireball kept zooming by me, running around, and kept lapping me. So
Yeah.
I figured I'd done lost. I didn't know I was that far ahead. And when I come off the fourth turn, I seen the guy still waving the white flag,
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm still leading this thing, And so come up and got the checkered flag.
So you thought you'd lost the race?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even have no idea I was still leading the race. I knew I was leading it, and going down the back stretch is where I blew the tire. And so when I come off the fourth turn, the guy had the white flag up,
Right.
fixing to give me the white flag, and I seen that, and then I said, well, I got one more lap besides that, and I ended up, I forgot how far I was ahead, but I was still 4 or 5 laps, I guess it was 3 or 4 anyway.
Now, you won your first championship driving for Cotton Owens.
Mhm.
What was it like driving for him?
It was good. I really enjoyed it, like I said, I drove for Ray Fox to start with, and after that, Cotton had done retired and getting different people to drive his car. So, and he come ask me to want to know if I wanted to drive more races, and I said sure, that'd be fine, And he said that let me drive, his car with Dodge. He just went with Dodge. He went with Dodge, I think, and run a few races in '62 or something like that.
Mhm.
And in '64, I started with him, and we ran quite a few races. Well, I
Right.
might have run some in '63, but in '64, I ran more races, or maybe it's '65, And I didn't run all of them, but I ran quite a few races. We was getting ready to run for the championship, as in '65 then. So we run quite a few races in '65, and in '66 is when we went and run all the races to win the championship, and we won it, by running all the races. Well, we didn't really win all of them. I think there was 2 or 3 that we actually missed in
No.
'66,
No, you didn't run the full schedule. I mean, I think you skipped maybe 3 or 4,
something like that.
something like that. That year, you won 15 races, and most of them were on fairly short tracks, half
Yeah,
mile
mostly that's
or
what we ran then.
Okay.
The Dodge, we didn't know anything. Dodge didn't either, as far as that goes, as far as running on super speedways, and we was a little bit behind on short, as far as horsepower. And then they come out and, they had the Hemi. We started doing that and got running better. But then NASCAR outlawed the Hemi. And that's when the Ford come out with, twin cams, overhead cams, something like that. So they outlawed that too, and I guess to make it race a little bit cheaper. But it was good. It was fun working with Cotton like that.
Now, was that part of the strategy to run as well as you could on short tracks, dominate on the short tracks, and then get what you could on the bigger
Well,
super
we
speedways?
was getting all we could anyway, on the short tracks or the big tracks.
Yeah.
But it just seems it just don't take as much like running on dirt and stuff like that, which we had a lot of dirt races to run too. And you can take a dirt car and just about run good, and it's no matter what springs you got under it, anything else, as long as it's halfway decent, you can do pretty good on dirt.
Okay. Now, you guys lost Dodge backing. Is that why you left Cotton?
Let's see, we was in 66, 67, I believe, or something along in there. Well, what happened then? We was going to run most of the races, or all the races, I guess, in '67 too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny the way it happened, but we was getting ready to go to Columbia, and so we got over there, and Cotton had the truck outside and everything, and he went home to take a shower or something. I don't know what it was, but when I got there, we'd always went and got ice, stuff like that, or stopped and got ice. So me and the boys, we took off to the ice house and got some ice and everything to put in the coolers for the drinks and things. So when we left to go get that, Cotton come up, and he seen that we was already gone. And so he thought we'd run off and left him, So it got teed him off a little bit, in which you can't blame him, because he thought we was gone. And so he got mad and just pulled the car and truck on the inside the garage. He said, well, if they run off, leave me here by myself, and I'm not even going, So we took off to Columbia, and when we got back with ice, we seen the car and truck gone. We said, well, Cotton's already gone. So we took off to Columbia trying to catch him, and when we got there, no Cotton. He hadn't even got up. So we got there, and we didn't get to race then, so he was home. And the next morning, like I say, the boys come in to go to work and everything, and he still teed off, and he done fired one or two or something, or said something to them, so they quit or whatever, but they know where they fired some of them.
Yeah.
Then I come in, I said, what's wrong? I said, you firing everybody or what? He said, well, what happened? I said, if you don't like it, you can leave too. You just like that. And I said, well, I don't like it, so I'm gone, So I turned around and left, and, of course, after that, I went with Hallman Moody.
Yeah.
And, of course, I went with them, and I won the championship in 68 with them, and 68 and 69,
Right.
And I actually won the championship every time I actually run for it on the races. So it was, and I had a good relationship with them. And what happened with them, we was in California testing for Ford, and Charlie Gray was out there with us, and he was with Ford, and we went to eat lunch one day and come back in, and Charlie said, well, you might as well load up and go home. I said, Ford just pulled out of racing while we was out there testing,
Wow.
And so that's what we did. We just loaded up, quit our test, and come on back, and so of course, Hallman Moody had enough parts and motors and everything. They could run 2 or 3 years, I guess, if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But since Ford pulled out of racing, I guess they felt like they needed to do something. So when I went up there and talking to him, and he wanted me to drive for 40%. Of course, everybody I've ever drove for, I always got 50% for driving. And he said, they pulled out of racing, so I need you to start driving for 40%. And I said, John, at 10%, what I would get is not going to keep you in racing. I said, if you can't make it on that, I said, we might well just quit right now.
Yeah.
So, and I know there wasn't no need me cutting my salary just because Ford pulled out of racing. As much money as he had and much parts, he wouldn't have had to buy none for 3 years anyway. So, so I left him, and then later I went with the Woods.
You mentioned this before. You only ran what amounted to the full schedule 3 or 4 times.
3 times.
And you won the championship
3 times.
3 times.
Right.
If you'd run the full schedule over the majority of your career, how many championships would you have won?
There's no telling. If I'd have been with the Woods or Hallman and Moody, well, even Cotton, we didn't. We won every time we run for it, even with Cotton. But if I'd have had the Hallman and Moody, which they had plenty of help and the equipment and stuff to do the same thing, and as anybody, and the Woods, which was they had what you say Ford, they give them all the parts and stuff they had, and I don't know, I really don't. I feel like I could have won quite a bit. I really do.
Do you ever look back on that and regret that decision?
Well, I wished. Well, it wasn't my decision.
Yeah.
See, it was their decision. They didn't want to run all the races, and they didn't have the help and stuff. And which they was up there in Stewart, Virginia, a little small town. And of course, I guess as long as Ford would have done it, they might or paid them for it. They probably would have done it, and they could have hired more people. But I felt like I could run. I don't know how many years I drove for them, but I feel like I could have probably won a championship half of those times if I'd have won it,
Yeah. What was the Wood brothers' reasoning for not running the full schedule?
They just, because they was there by themselves up there, they had a little small garage, and they didn't have the help. And, it's just a family-run deal. Mm-hmm. And tell you the truth, Leonard is the one that done all the work. I mean, Eddie and Lynn, which was smaller then,
yeah.
And they was just learning on what to do, and they let them tear the car apart and put it back together. But Leonard would check everything them boys done. He went right behind them and redone it to make sure that it was done right and stuff like that. And as far as Glenn Only thing I ever seen him do was pack wheel bearings. We just like when we go to Charlotte, and we sit on the pole so many times. I believe it's 12 times there in a row or something like that. And he would, I've seen him change hubs. They would always use, I'd say, graphite grease or stuff like that or something, and he'd already have the hubs made up just for qualifying. And he would put them hubs on the car, and of course we'd qualify with them and take them off and put the other hubs because they had real thin grease and stuff like that in them. And I seen him put the hub on one time. He put it on with his hand, and tighten it up, and do it with his hands. I said, that thing ain't tight enough. He said, oh, yeah. He said, you ain't going to run it two or three laps. He said, it'd be nice. He said, you'll be all right. And he could take his hand and spin that hub, and, man, they'd just keep on turning, because they had the real thin graphite grease and stuff like that in it. And stuff like that. They did a lot to that car just to run fast for a few laps, And I know they would back off on the brakes. And I didn't have brake one on that car. If I was to go in the corner and had to hit the brakes or something, it just went to the floor. Because
Really?
I know after I got through qualifying, I'd have to pump them 4 or 5 times, so I'd have enough brakes to even stop after that. And so, like I said, if I'd have blown a tire or something going in the corner, I'd have busted that wall wide open. But we sat on the pole, and that's what we went there for.
David, there have always been a lot of comparisons between you and Richard Petty. At what point did you look at Richard and say, this is the guy that I've got to beat?
About every time we run, everywhere we would go, it would always seem like it would be Richard and myself, ending up at the end of the race running. And, of course, there were some guys like Dick Hutchinson and Ed Jarrett. They would run, but it seemed like a lot of times we would run so hard and sweet and bang, especially with Hutch or somebody like that, and we'd end up wearing the car out or tearing the car up or doing something, and the other one would end up standing up Jared or somebody like that would end up maybe winning the race, or Hutch or somebody, And so we got a little bit smart and decided we better just make sure we be around at the end of the race, and then we had something to run.
Now, one of the stats that has always amazed me is the fact that you and Richard finished 1 and 2 63 times.
Mm-hmm.
You won 33 of those times.
Right.
Has there ever been a case where you maybe tried to aggravate Richard about that and say,
No.
I won 33 times, you just won 30, so I'm the man?
No, I've never have. We don't even talk about racing when we get around each other. We always got something else or going on with a bunch of bull, and saying something about each other, saying what the other ain't done or can't do or something like that. But we've always been good friends, and he's my hero, And of course, like I said, if I ever went to a racetrack and he was the one that I always looked to and figured if I could beat him, I could win the race.
Your most famous 1-2 finish with Richard was the 76 Daytona 500, and I do want to talk about that one in just a second. But there was a race at Daytona a couple years before that, the 74 Firecracker 400, that's pretty famous, where you took the white flag and kind of lifted or let him by. What do you remember about that race?
Well, he had me beat if I didn't do something. I knew I had to do something because I always accused him running no big engine anyway. He has done that quite a few times, I found out. But he had me beat and I said, well, if he'd have went on, only way I could beat him is trap by him,
Yeah.
And I knew that. I knew that I had to get me a running start and go by him that way because I couldn't just follow him and go by him. And during that race, we was going to different things and trying different things, and I'd slow up every once in a while and see what he would do and see when he could pass me, and I could see when I was the fastest at different points, and he had me beat, and no doubt about it. And I said, well, I don't know what I can do. I'm gonna run second. If it comes down between me and him, I said, I'm going to run second, one way or another. There ain't no way I can beat him. And I said, I got to do something to some way or another to try to make him and get in front of me, And so he wouldn't do it. I'd slow up, and he would not pass me. He'd stay right back there behind me, and he would not try to pass. So when I was coming by, and right when I got to the white flag, I throwed my hand up and just cut down to the inside like I was out of gas or something. He shot right by me on the outside, and I said, So just quick as I seen him pull out to go by me, I got back on the throttle.
Yeah.
And it just ended up just right that I just and I think that he thought something was wrong anyway because I was far enough back then. When going into one, he probably backed off, a little bit. And going down the back stretch, I was really drafting. That old Mercury would draft real good. If it just smelled another car in front of it, it would really, break the wind and go on. But it was so big old square front end on it, it would really break a lot of wind. And as long as the car in front of it, I could really draft and pick up a lot of speed. So I caught him down, going down the back stretch or close to him and coming off a 4. I caught him enough that I just ducked right down and went by him, started by him, and he run me down on the apron then when he done that. And I beat him, and after the race, he said that was a dangerous move I pulled. It wasn't half as dangerous as he was running me down on the apron, as far as that goes. But anyway, he got ticked off about it, but I'd found out that before that, he said that there was no way I was going to beat him that day because I think of the last 2 July races before, I'd pulled something on him somewhere or another and beat him. And he said this is one time that he wasn't going to outsmart me or do nothing, pull no trick on me, that he was going to get me that day. He talked pretty confidence in it, is what somebody told me, so he undoubtedly had a big engine that day. But he was good.
Let's talk about the 1976 Daytona 500.
Richard and myself, we tangled up, and we both spun around, and Richard's car stalled with him, and I kept mine running. And by the time I got turned around and went back and got on the racetrack and got to the checkered flag, I was running about 20 or 30 miles an hour. And another thing happened there, I was in the infield, in the grass part, right in the pit road there. And some of them people said that Joe Frazon come down the pit road and hit the front end of my car and turned it around towards the start and finish line and went on. But that's not true.
Yeah.
Now, Joe Frazon did come down through there and just snibbed the front end of my car, but my car would not turn to the right. If they look at the film, I backed up and turned around and made a circle to the left and went out on the racetrack that way. But of course, Joe is known to try to get in a wreck and everything else, anyway, but he didn't help me win it, that's for sure.
I've never really heard you and Richard criticize each other about the end of that race.
No, we was just racing, no doubt about it.
Is there anything that either one of you could have done to avoid that accident?
Oh, yeah. I could have backed off. But that ain't racing,
No.
He wasn't in front of me. And he acted like he thought he was. So what he was doing, he just kept coming up, and he was coming up to cut me off. So I couldn't, back then, or time before that, it was, we could draft and pass somebody coming off 4 and beat them to the start and finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And I always accused him. He knew if he got in front of me, there's no way I could get back by him by the time I was coming off 4, see.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kept coming up. His right rear hit my left front. And, I could have backed off.
Yeah.
And I figured that he'd just come over and hit me, then that would be, he stopped. But he come up too far. And, of course, that got us both spinning around. And and I kept mine running, and he didn't.
Now, after winning more than 40 races with the Wood brothers, you guys split up after something went wrong on a pit stop at Darlington.
No. That's not it. No,
really?
Everybody thought that. Everybody thought when them tires come off the car, that's the reason we split up. But no, we was about to break up anyway. We had got to where we argued a little bit about little small things. It didn't matter, what it was, and that's usually what happens like it when something, you just get. We wasn't winning, and I guess I heard they was blaming me. And, of course, I also heard it, some things that they said that I said, which they was getting information from the wrong man, because I have never said a thing about the Wood brothers about it being bad or anything their fault or nothing like that, because to me, they are the greatest people that I'd ever drove for. You know,
Mhm.
far as that goes, they're just the whole family is just as nice as they can be. You know, and I have never said anything bad about them or anything like that. But what I've ever said to them is about them has been to their face. I have never said
Yeah,
nothing behind them, and
yeah.
I think the world of them. I really do.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask it, if something had already been simmering, behind the scenes that nobody knew about.
It was just that, like I said, I was tired because I wasn't winning, and
Yeah.
they was too. You know, and I guess both of us looking for excuse. You know, and it was something coming, and so when the tires got off, it teed us both off because they told me that at that time my windshield done somebody done blow the motor at times, and I couldn't hardly see out the windshield, nothing like that. And I told them that I had to clean the windshield, and so they didn't clean the windshield to stop before that. I couldn't hardly see, and the next pit stop, they told me I was going to have to beat Darrell out because Darrell
Mhm.
was in front leading the race then, and we both was going to pit, and he said, "Be ready because we got to beat Darrell out." And the ch- my you know when you take off in the pits, the signal is to go when that drop jack falls. As quick as
Mhm.
that jack falls, you're supposed to go. And so they did not tell me that they was going to change all four tires. And I told them I had to get that windshield cleaned because I couldn't see good. And especially getting late in the evening there and the sun shining in the windshield, it's coming off at Darlington. So when I come in for the pits, Glenn was leaned over and was cleaning my windshield. Well, I couldn't see the guy come down, squat down, and take the left front tire off. I couldn't see that.
Yeah.
And of course, I couldn't see the rear tire either,
Right.
far as that goes. So while he was cleaning the windshield, they was taking the tires off, in which I didn't know that. And of course, I was watching Darrell up front, and I was ready to, beat him out of the pits, what I was trying to do. And so when and besides, when you change four tires, they always say change four tires. And I stay further enough away from the wall where the jack man could get in there and jack the car up with plenty of room. And where if it's just two tires, I'd get close to the wall so they wouldn't have to force go run around
Yeah.
the car.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to make everything quicker and faster. And so when I come in the pits, they didn't say change four tires. And when they was leaning over cleaning the windshield, I couldn't see the guy squatting down taking them tires off. And so when they dropped the jack on that right side, I took off.
And so did your tires.
Right. And so I got down there in the pit road and they come off. So, but everybody thought that's what it was, but it wasn't really what it was. We just, Leonard and myself, we got to where we'd argue about any little old bitty thing. It didn't mean nothing, but just wanted to argue about something, because it wasn't winning.
Now, that happened at Darlington in the spring, and then later in the year, you filled in for Dale Earnhardt with Rod Osterlund when he got hurt at Pocono.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You come back to Darlington in the fall,
Right.
and you win the Southern 500.
Yeah. In Earnhardt's car.
What did it mean to you to get that win at Darlington after what had happened with the Wood brothers at Darlington in the
Well,
spring?
anytime you win at Darlington, it means a lot.
Yeah.
Where you just won or where you hadn't won or whatever. But it made me feel good. Winning. I won the race, and for Earnhardt, and which was it made me feel good.